Hi there, I'm Dr. Jill Wener. I'm a meditation teacher, physician, tapping instructor, author, and aspiring anti-racist. And I am so excited to have the power trio from Pittsburgh, the brain and the brawn and the beauty and all of the things behind EARN, the Executive Action Response Network. I've interviewed all three of these amazing people before individually, but their work needs more attention. And so I invited them all back to speak with me about the EARN mission and anything else that comes up. So I'm so excited to have you all back here with me today. Maybe introduce yourself briefly and your role in EARN, if that is even, I don't even know if you have formalized that, but George, let's start with you.
Sure, thanks, Jill, and thank you for having our colleagues on this call today. I'm George Robinson, one of the co-founders of EARN. In my 9 to 5, I am the Director of Supplier Diversity and Inclusion for the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. And fortunately, that level and body of work helps to cross over into the mission, ethos, and effort within the Executive Action and Response Network. So glad to be here today, back with you in your listening audience.
Thanks for being here, George. Jessica, can you talk a little bit about who you are and what brought you here?
Sure. Well, happy to be here. Thanks for having me back. And I am a healthcare executive and change agent here in Pittsburgh. I lead a healthcare coalition called the Pittsburgh Business Group One Health. It's one of the largest coalitions in the country, employer-led, focused on realizing healthcare value on behalf of millions of lives from a cost, quality, access, and equity perspective. I also am an entrepreneur. I have a startup organization called InspireWare, which is a radical, transparent, and accountable organization that leverages technology to empower the most vulnerable and marginalized communities from a healthcare perspective and a well-being perspective. I am a co-founder of EARN, and no official titles outside of that, just putting my heart all into it and my purpose all into ensuring that we are realizing a true quality of life and empowerment and economic viability for African Americans.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jessica. And Martin, how about you?
Martin Shepard. I'm founder and CEO of ARC Access Control. ARC converges cybersecurity and physical security solutions for organizations in the critical infrastructure. I'm a co-founder as well of EARN, of course, with these wonderful folks. Jessica said it, there are no titles beyond that. We wear many hats simultaneously. We switch hats, we trade hats, but we are all committed to the work of elevating Black people in the United States of America and beyond.
Wonderful. So, so many questions. Jessica, like, what was the moment you knew that these two were the people you were going to change the world with?
The moment I knew these were the two was when we went clay shooting.
Of course. Of course, obviously.
The clay shooting.
No, it was clay shooting.
Yeah, clay shooting.
We went clay shooting. I happened to be the token woman on the invite that volunteered. And I'm grateful I did. So we volunteered. I volunteered. My husband was able to fill in for another one of our classmates who we were on an executive leadership program together the prior year. And George had invited several of us to go clay shooting, and my husband was able to be a proxy given that one person dropped out. So after each shoot, literally getting back into our carts, we were literally talking about the state of Black America, the pain of witnessing the murder of George Floyd. And it was very real to us. It was raw at that time. And at the same time, we were being organized through this executive program that we were in to talk about our feelings, which many of us in this country, Black professionals, have found ourselves in in the summer months? How are you feeling? What can we do? What can you do to help us do? And so in one of those sessions, it became clear that we needed to incorporate as Black people. That's all I kept hearing, that led from the theme of our clay shooting. And then that moment, I said, Black people need to incorporate. And we need to have a statement that Black professionals in particular need to incorporate. And we need to have a statement that represents our voice in this. And how do we do that? And so called George and Martin out, and then we had a call. I think within 24 hours, George was like, all right, now we got to talk about this. What are we going to do? And at that call and at that very moment, we made decisions and we worked on a statement and formalized rather rapidly after that.
So Jill, I'll tell you, we talked about this a little bit. And I made it sound like I was really, refined and dignified throughout this whole process. I was completely frustrated by everything, right? There was a lot of emotion that spilled out of the George Floyd incident on the back of COVID, on the back of Breonna Taylor, so many things sort of converging in one place. Jessica was crystal clear on a couple of things. We got to incorporate. We have to incorporate, meaning we have to organize something that is a legal structure that binds us together. She was very clear on that. She was also very clear that there was energy in the street and that we had to put our energy into something that could help the people who were in the street, right? And I think those two thrusts really help us get our minds around what to do to bring together an organization. So kudos to Jessica for having the vision and clarity to kind of rally us.
And if I could also add to that, yes, I was the person that provided the invitation for the clay shoot, and one of the things that we talked about,
and the best shooter too, by the way.
Say it again.
The best shooter also.
One of the things that our coursework brought to highlight specifically and generally is the fact of Black self-care. For me to enable African American professionals to go to something typically Black folks aren't going to clay shoots, to get out of the city and being in an environment where we could have that conversation, a successful conversation around an activity that just does not really occupy your mind. One of the key things that we've looked at across the years is just this Black trauma around different events that are happening, and how our bodies are digesting it. And so, fortunately, we have this opportunity to get out of town, to let our hair down and just really start having a serious conversation around, so what are we going to do? We saw this void within our community, this lack of voice. There were pockets of energy, but there just wasn't a committed voice specifically around the African American executive and the corporate structures across our community. And so, that provided the opportunity for that level of dialogue. And much like Martin said, Jessica's energy around building something solid, building something concrete, drove us and guided us to where we are today in terms of incorporation and having business structure and business model around it.
Which is always with startups. It's always a work in progress, and we are iterating and responding even as we speak here. The interesting thing, super interesting thing, not to hijack the interview, Jill, but the super interesting thing, if you think about it, just listening to George talk and going back to that moment, you start thinking, who is the voice of Black executive corporate America, right? There is an organization that I could mention, and the folks on the podcast might agree with that. but it is fairly singular, and that the leadership and the vision and organization around Black professionals and Black executives in corporate America is something that you don't typically hear as a constituent voice. You don't really hear much said about that. So in that way, we feel like this is cutting edge. We're doing something that, of course, needs to be done, but we're doing something that is cut from whole cloth. You know, we're stepping out.
Okay. Again, so many great things to talk about. So thank you for those answers. And I love the way in life, I don't know if you felt something when you were clay shooting together, but
Yes.
Looking back, it's such a great story. It's just so, George making it all happen, the event, and then you going as the token woman, and then you guys go, and there's this synergy, and everything's building, and out comes this incredible organization. I love story. I love the synchronicity. I love how it all comes together exactly the way it's supposed to. It seems kind of predestined in a way, and almost wondering how did this not exist before? That's how solid and intuitive it feels.
The funny thing about it is when you talk about how did this not exist before, and of course, this conversation will change. As say, if you were interviewing someone in a different city, in a different geography, with a different level of energy around community. But, in terms of Black Pittsburgh, which I'm not from Pittsburgh, but I've been here for 8 years, and just seeing how the community communicates. Yes, you have these pockets of communication, but you're not necessarily seeing the linkages across the communication converting to organization, converting to action items and things of that nature. You have a lot of pockets of people talking.
Yeah.
And right now, considering everything that's going on, even pre-COVID, pre-election, just within this community, you had several layers of communication, but there wasn't a thread that could bind those communications into synergistic action, incorporation, and strategy. And so, depending on the geography, if you interviewed someone out of, say Atlanta or Houston or Chicago or Nashville or Austin, Texas or LA, you might get a different level of response. Oddly enough, I'm finding where the conversation is expanding across the country, where smaller groups are now turning into larger groups, are turning into strategy determining bodies, leaning on certain social agency. But it really took the inertia of the snowball of all of these things that are happening within our community to really begin to wake the sleeping community, the sleeping giant. You had several people that were, I'll call it woke, so to speak, trying to make change. But now it seems like with this imperfect but perfect storm that we're going through, you're seeing more and more people speak truth to power, organize, incorporate. And we just so happen to be the lucky three amongst our colleagues in the executive education course that said, hey, we're going to move the needle. We're not just going to look at the needle, hope and pray that the needle moves. We have to do something.
Yeah. That's the most significant thing, right, guys? We know that there's a lot of talk. There's always been a lot of talk. This is not about talk. This is about a righteous mission to correct things that are wrong and bring equity in places that have been long starved for equitable treatment of Black folks in corporate spaces. That's who we are at our essence. That it's oddly enough, I think we came together through this, and it is a fantastic story. And it is, I think I said this to you yesterday, Jill. I think before we came together for this, we recognized, the commonality just in terms of worldview, and how we saw things, even before we really organized. Um, but we're at the stage in this fight where I think all of us see that there is a major road forward for us to win, but without organization, you can't get anywhere. You have to have. I met rest in peace. I met Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, right after the riots in Cincinnati in 1999, 2000, whenever it was. And his advice for the young folks, I was young back then, his advice for the young folks was, the only thing I tell you you must do is organize. Everything else, you can talk, you can plan, you can do it. You got to organize people. And I think that being our initial first step was a good first step to get organized, get our vision together. I don't know if Jill, if we shared with you our vision document, get our vision together, and then really start to expand our footprint by bringing in membership, offering services to the corporate community, and driving accountability to the corporate community. So, yeah.
Jessica, how have you, because it's from what George and Martin are saying, you were you were the voice that was like, incorporate, let's get this done. So what has it been like for you all getting this out there? What has been this isn't what is this called? A podcast. This is not a podcast on marketing, but I'm curious to know what you've done to get the word out there, and what has the response been? So Jessica, if you don't mind.
Sure. The first order of business, we knew it was clear. I mean, incorporate was one, but simultaneously, what is our voice? How do we bring life to our voice, and what does that look like? And we decided to write a letter. And this was in conjunction with a lot of statements and letters being put in print and through the internet, from corporations to community organizations, and a variety of different stakeholders in our community, white and Black. But we didn't see that representation of the Black professional. We saw a lot of articles about your Black professionals are not okay, headlines and articles about what they were going through and how stressed out and the mental burden. But we wanted to have a level of empowerment and strength in that letter, and comprehensive enough that we felt comfortable that it actually represented the voice of the majority of us in corporate America. And again, to Martin's point, to ensure that the work of on the ground protesters and activists wasn't in vain. However, it had its limitations. And how do we not only be a benefactor of their work, but actually take what we know from an acumen and strategy perspective and put that into action that can go further. So we wrote a letter. That was our first order of action. We literally got together at Martin's HQ, we call Martin's place, and started drafting. And to be honest, it took a few weeks, several weeks. And in the middle of those weeks, we began to hear from the Black professional voice of different organizations here regionally. And even nationally, we started to hear over that time. And we even questioned at one point, well, is our letter still relevant? And that delayed us a day or two while we deliberated. And then we got our heads back on straight and said, yes, our voice in our letter is still very relevant. We have to make sure that it's strong, not politically correct, but creates a shift in the atmosphere for every reader who has access to it. So we wrote the letter, and we leveraged a communications firm to get that letter out to the media, and the media picked up on it. And week after week, sometimes multiple times in a week, we had interviews with the local newspapers, the television stations. I think we've pretty much been on every television station. George has done a radio interview. I mean, all within a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. And again, we were just asked just last week for comment in an article in the Business Times as a result of the presidential election. And so the community and the media has responded to it and has, and then we've had many people share the articles that have come out. We also shared the letter with the members of the executive cohort we were in, and that organization, and at CMU, at Carnegie Mellon University, we felt that it was critical that our peers who ultimately were here to serve had an opportunity to see the letter and get that insight first and foremost before anyone else. And that was our first order of action once we had the letter, before media actually had access to it. The reaction has been interesting. I would say, and then George also led making sure that the top 50 organizations within our region got a hand-mailed letter. So they had to open it up, fill it, read it. So the top 50 largest organizations in our region, CEOs, also received the letter directly.
Right, corporations and organizations,
Yeah.
publicly traded and private and non-profit.
Yes, so that's how we got it out. And the reaction has been interesting. I can say corporate America has still overall been pretty quiet. We haven't heard a lot from the largest organizations. We've heard quite a bit interestingly, from community stakeholders, mostly a lot of them white men, older, who are investors or venture capitalists or, serial entrepreneurs.
Social entrepreneurs,
who want to put investment behind a cause, and they want to see movement in the short term. We've also heard from nonprofits. So we have heard from nonprofits and more mid-sized organizations, CEOs.
Power brokers outside of the region, Jessica?
Yeah, power brokers outside the region, Silicon Valley to be exact. We have, our peers, however, have been quite hesitant to fully embrace the movement. They got quiet or were clear on the fact that they wait and see, or they didn't support our direction. And that, I would say, did throw us back a little bit as far as why, I don't know, I guess we expected more support from our peers, Black people who were trying to help and advocate for, but ultimately understood their position being in corporate America, the organizations that we're putting pressure on. So it's like, you're in this pressure cooker, you're in it, we're putting pressure on it. And what is that going to do to you and your experience while we're, outside cooking up, putting the heat under your organization. Yeah. So we understand that, and we understand we have to walk through the process and stay our course. But it's been an interesting reaction.
Yeah, and again, it just goes back to, what I was saying, Jill, when you look at different geographies and their corporate cultures within those geographies, you'll see a different level of reaction to this level of communication, this level of energy. As Jessica said, we've had sort of a mixed review and response surrounding the corporate conversation that we were bringing to the table. I just recently had a conversation with a former chief financial officer of a major organization surrounding EARN, and one of the things that this individual said was, we want to put the past in the past, and not point fingers at folks and lay blame, and all that stuff was in the history. What we're trying to figure out is, what are we going to do moving forward? Yeah. And unfortunately, that's
the old playbook. That's the old playbook.
Well, unfortunately, the whole thing is, as a part of the old playbook, if you don't understand the history, you're bound to repeat it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you have different geographies that are okay with repeating history, meaning repeating it from a generational standpoint.
Yeah.
You know, one of the driving forces around the creation of EARN, and, you know, this is a very sentimental piece in the conversation, is the fact that we are doing this for our children's future. You know, trying to build a different community for our children to live, grow, thrive, and take full advantage of all of the opportunities that are available to their non-African American colleagues. And so, you know, considering the level of mute voice within Pittsburgh, Martin and I not being from Pittsburgh, so we can always throw that up. You know, we're from different areas where it's totally different conversation, and corporate response has been different. We have to get behind this if we're going to make change within this region. We just cannot allow there to be this recycle of policy, of practice, complacency, and other things around that whole space of I'm giving up and I'm just going to agree with the status quo if we're going to make change here. One of the key things I had to let that former CFO know is, you know, you have to understand that you're talking about meeting the rubber to the road. Well, unfortunately for most African-American professionals, the rubber meeting the road is the Mayflower truck pulling off with their housewares, moving to another city. That's where the rubber's meeting the road around here. It's not how are we, you know, preparing elevation and promotion tracks, expanding social capital for individuals, expanding networks, and just driving and pushing a level of accountability across HR departments within the corporate sphere here in Pittsburgh to just change the level of dynamics around recruitment, attraction, retention, promotion, and elevation of African-American professionals here.
And Jill, so to be clear, right? Pittsburgh is a unique place, a lovely place in many ways, but in many ways, in this discussion on this particular subject matter, very challenging and challenged place, right? These problems, and I'm gonna push it a little bit, George. These problems exist everywhere. I don't care if you're in Chicago or Atlanta or DC. These same problems still exist, where the representative group of leadership within these corporate organizations does not match or mix the demographic population or the percentage of people who are amongst the general population there. Pittsburgh just happens to be one of the worst. We talked about it before, Jill, the gender equity study out of the University of Pittsburgh. I don't know. Well, I have some idea because we are familiar with the professor who conducted the study, what the original impetus for the study was. But what came out of the study was this is the worst of 25 major metropolitan areas in the United States for Black people to live. Was it 89? I thought it was the top 25. Okay, so 89.
89 comparable cities.
89 comparable cities, right? And this is the worst for Black people to what we have started to call thrive, but ultimately this is the worst for you to exist in. Like healthcare, access to healthcare, education, access to education, opportunity, economic opportunity, upward mobility. This is the worst of all of those places to be. So we speak on Pittsburgh, and we are EARN. This is the EARN Pittsburgh organization. We are all very clear that this is an organization that has a membership model that goes to a national level and touches and reaches all the geography and particularly places that are hubs for Fortune 500 type organizations, right? So Pittsburgh is just a uniquely challenging place, the worst in many objective regards. But this is the United States of America. 73 million people just voted for a would-be strongman racist. That's the country that we live in. Some places are better than others, but that's the country that we live in. There's a lot of work to do around giving Black leaders in the corporate space access to opportunities, access to capital, so on and so forth.
Can you all, I want to shift gears a little bit. I'd love to know more about the app that you all are implementing. And I don't actually know, Jessica, you mentioned an app at the beginning. I don't know if that's the same app that you're using, but I'm not sure exactly who to direct this question to. Martin's face seemed to light up big when I just asked it, but can you talk about the app and how it fits in with the EARN mission and implementation?
Jessica.
Sure. So in our letter, we had shared a variety of different recommendations, ranging from the elevation and recruitment and retention of Black talent to actually increasing your spend with African American organizations, to addressing pay equity and health equity, to a level of we need a measurement and transparency. And so we encouraged the organizations in our region to leverage existing measurement tools from a separate organization called Vibrant Pittsburgh. They have a measurement tool that is already out there, surveys. We do believe and encourage people to continue to leverage that tool. However, it is not designed with the African American empowerment and elevation and equity in mind only, right? It's a very broader diversity inclusion tool, and it has its place. And so what we are aiming to do is secure a mechanism to elevate the actual well-being and well-doing of African Americans now, with our aim to thrivability. And how do you know if you're getting to thrivability if we don't understand how people are living today? And so we, through the organization I lead, InspireWare, we have an app called Our Balance. Through that organization, EARN is leveraging that and has white labeled it to have a representation of Black professional well-being in Pittsburgh. So we are the only institution and organization, to my understanding, definitely in this region, but I believe in the country, that has and will be continue to begin to evolve a pulse on the well-being of Black professionals. How are we working? How are we spending our time socially? Are we able to get activity and play? Are we sleeping? And so that's one thing. You can go to the earnpittsburgh.com website right now and actually see how Black professionals are doing right now in Pittsburgh from a livability perspective. In addition to that, our aim is to have a more accountable and transparent tool that provides opportunities for Black professionals to have input. So that our balance tool, the Black Professional Pulse, is anonymous. You don't have to input anything. It basically goes with you. It's through an app on your phone. As long as you have your phone with you, it gets smarter over time and can track those 4 quadrants I mentioned. However, the other tool that's in development will allow for input, bottom-up input from Black professionals, and top-down input from their corporate CEOs and organizations, taking the idea of the CSR reports, these corporate responsibility reports that corporations provide out a year after the activities are done, and giving them the ability to actually put in their commitments, their time, their dollars to anti-racism activity, make that visible. And so this platform will allow them to say, hey, we want to pledge $100 million to anti-racism in these categories to address, if they're a bank, redlining and loans and the oppression that we've caused in the history of banking. We want to do something about that, and we want to do this. And we want to ensure that we increase Black people at our board of director level and our ranks in our C-suite, those kind of things. We want to support HBCUs, whatever, education, whatever it may be, we can make that visible. And that's what EARN aims to do. And then the bottom up is, hey, employees, you see the commitments, they're no longer hidden. Is this happening? And you validate that you're seeing these shifts in culture happening. These commitments are actually translating into the culture and your well-being in that organization, and you're being welcomed in that organization. You actually being included strategically. Are you being elevated? Are you being, or are you still being oppressed? And this is good for headlines. Yeah, and so we're looking to bring visibility to that.
If I can, and that's such a key point. Like, listen, it's one thing to commit something, It's one thing to follow through on the commitment. If it's not changing the status quo for your Black employees and those pipelines within your leadership groups and pipelines up that leadership ladder, then we need to know that, right? So you can craft policy, right? There's game always in play. You can craft policy, you can give money, and it still not be hitting the places that it needs to hit. And so, as Jessica mentioned, the bottom up component of our accountability tool is designed to be able to poll, to survey people within these organizations to see what their experience is, right? It's important that we get the top-down commitments and we hold people accountable, and that's a valuable tool for those organizations, just to have a place to be able to manage that accountability. But from the bottom up, what are the people on the ground experiencing? Is their life changing? Are they still being held responsible or accountable for Black life within the organization? Are they being burdened or overburdened by some of the issues that encounter Black people socially within their roles and jobs within their organizations? And if so, we need to know that, right? And the tool is very strategically designed to be able to capture both of those sort of metrics.
Yeah, ultimately it's empowerment. And, we've had many conversations, even with our mentors who have been there, done that on the other side of the country. And we can see how, when we talk about this, if you're a corporate CEO, that you might be like, oh, I don't want that level of accountability and transparency. But at the same time, if you're making $1 billion commitment, multi-billion-dollar commitment, Jamie Dimon and Bank of America and Bill Demchak at PNC Bank, why wouldn't you want that to be visible? Why wouldn't you want the community, your stakeholders, your shareholders, your customers, your workforce to know that you are living up to those promises, and also get the feedback if it's not translating? You're making these major investments in a variety of different ways, your resources, more volunteer time, actual dollars, and then you really don't want to know if it's translating into how people resonate and align with your organization. Why wouldn't you want that? And we do believe that there are going to be some leaders who do want that. And then once they step up, others will follow. But it doesn't have to be punitive. Transparency doesn't have to be punitive. It can be, for sure.
Yeah, it's reputational. I mean, that's the thing. It's reputational. If you said you're going to do something, Jamie Dimon and Bill Demchak, they want to be known as people who have done what they said that they're going to do, right? Full stop. And people, to Jessica's point, there are other leaders in corporate America who aspire to be like those guys, right? And if those guys are being held accountable, then presumably other men and women would want that same level of transparency to be projected from their organization and to be held accountable at that same type of standard that those organizations are. And I just think, I think we're dawning into a new day in this country. It's either going to be golden or it's going to be bad, right? And to the extent that it is golden, it means that the people who have borne the brunt of harsh labor, the people who have borne the brunt of inequity and of an underclass social circumstance based upon superficial characteristics of melanin in their skin, right? Those people are going to be lifted into positions of helping guide this country to a better place. Period. End of discussion. And I think leaders, with visionary leaders of these big organizations, they understand that. I don't think it's a big sale for them. I think they get that already, right? And I think that they sign up for this type of an effort in order to show that they get it, and in order for us to be able to have a mechanism to say, hey, you got it, but not quite, right? This is beyond just throwing $1 million at the local chapter of XYZ. This is throwing $1 million at something to see a tangible, measurable outcome at the end. We are, the three of us are executive leaders. If it doesn't result in the outcome that we can measure, then it didn't do nothing. we got to go back to the drawing board.
not just your influence and your role in society and your voice, but it's also your business expertise, and you're applying that. You're not just like, we're making change, but it's, I mean, what you're saying here, my brain can't even, because I don't have the business mind. All the levels of data and measurement and transparency that you're building in is so genius, and it's so great that you're building that in from the ground up, so that that's part of it moving forward, and you don't have to look back and be like, oh, I wish we had done this, or I wish we had actually gotten data. You're getting the data because you're executives and doing it in a way that is gonna, you know, that mind, and you know the mind of the people that you're trying to reach. So I want to talk to you all forever, but it is Friday afternoon, and presumably we all have other things to do, although I can't imagine anything more lovely than speaking with you. I would like to make sure we have time to talk about how people can find you. How, if I know you have a mailing list, so if you can talk about that, we have just a couple more minutes. So,
Yeah, I mean, the easy way is info@earnpittsburgh.com. You can definitely connect with each of us via LinkedIn. We actually have a EARN Pittsburgh LinkedIn page. You can connect with us individually on our individual LinkedIn pages. And really, we want to thank your listeners. We want to thank your audience. Hopefully those individuals that are intrigued by what we've been talking about, they ask questions, they find out ways that they can interact with us. But again, the info@earnpittsburgh.com email address would be best. And then, of course, always connecting with us on LinkedIn. Guys, I'm not sure if you have any other.
Our website, the biggest call to action is go to www.earnpittsburgh.com. Actually sign up. There's a form there. If you're Black, download the app. The link is on there, so you can join the Black professional community. You do not have to be in Pittsburgh. And if you're not Black and you want to be an ally or an advocate, please sign in, and those options are there for you. This is a community effort, and so we want everyone at the table who wants to be at the table to move this forward. So we're looking for volunteers, we're looking for supporters, encouragers, because this is our lives. This isn't just a project. This is impacting us today, and it's impacting our future and our kids, and as George mentioned. So we need the encouragement and the support, and we also need your expertise and your skill sets. So if you're willing to get dirty with us and get your hands in and get in some good trouble, then please join us. And you could do that at our website.
Right, and don't be shy. We accept donations as well. So, because, you know, all of these movements, they take a myriad of inputs. And one of those definitely is financial support. You know, this is a very huge shoulder and burden to tow, but we also understand what's on the other side of this effort. And so, as Jessica said, we invite you to our website as well as email.
Great. Thank you so much to all of you for being here. Jessica Brooks, George Robinson, Martin Shepard, thank you for all the work you do. I feel like I should disclose the fact that I work with you. I think we've talked about this in all the separate interviews.
Yes, you should.
Aisha and I are your anti-racism training team. So I have a vested interest in your success, but that success is the bigger success. It is not any personal thing, but we all believe in each other so much, which I think is what's so great about the relationship. Just really looking forward to seeing where everything goes, and the lives that are going to be the lives and the cultures, I think, that are going to be in the systems that they're going to be changed, or already being changed by your work. So thank you all. I'll put all your information and links in the show notes, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for your partnership.
Thank you.